Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Arlene Dijamco, the MultiDimensional MD. My mission is to help wake up medicine and fully embrace mind, body, and especially spirit. As Edgar Cayce said, spirit is the life, mind is the builder, and the physical is the result. So some of you that may know me personally may be wondering why I'm here today, because it may seem kind of crazy to be having this live stream episode. Because something very unexpected happened, and my dad passed suddenly early Monday morning. And the reason that I'm here today is because this whole episode is about living life fully. And I couldn't imagine a better way to be spending some time. And also here with my good friend, Janet Walsmith, to be really celebrating life and talking about how to live life fully. Because my dad did that, and he sure would want all of us to. And so I'm doing this as much for me as for you. So we're going to have a really great chat here. And it's like you're getting to sit in on the two of us as if we were just on the phone or having a cup of tea. And because Janet has an incredible story. She has had a journey with multiple sclerosis, and she's learned so much about it. And there are 3 key messages that we're going to talk about as well. And she's also interviewed like so many people. I think you interviewed like 25 people with multiple sclerosis, and the messages are so similar. And to me, these are really universal messages, because if you just took these 3 keys to heart and really embraced them in your life, you could heal from anything. And because you are already perfect and loved fully just as you are. So let me give you a little background about Janet. She lives in the seaside town of Hingham, Massachusetts. I used to live in Massachusetts, about 10 years ago. And so we live not too far apart on the South Shore there. So Janet lives in Hingham, Massachusetts with her amazing husband, Joe, 3 awesome daughters who are similar ages to my oldest 3, and 2 active Aussie doodles. She holds an MBA from Harvard Business School, yay Harvard, a BA from Northwestern University, and a 200-hour yoga teacher training certification. A retired management consultant and strategic planner who speaks Spanish and Italian, Janet loves being a mom and is contemplating her next entrepreneurial venture. Janet was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2019. And this health curveball awakened her passion for tapping into one's healing power. She is currently using nutrition, exercise, and mindfulness to manage her condition. You can follow Janet's journey into wellness on Instagram at well.thought.out. So thank you, Janet, for being here on this special day.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored, and thanks for sharing your thoughts. And I'm hoping that we can just have a meaningful conversation, and so sorry for your loss.
And I mean, this is what I want to focus on, is having a meaningful conversation to talk about the meaning of life, to talk about what healing is. And I know you've learned so much about that. And a lot of people had said that you're very courageous for sharing some of these intimate details about your own story. Can you tell us like why you want to share this experience?
So I actually was officially diagnosed with MS in 2019, as you mentioned, but I think I had my first symptom in 2003, where I had double vision. And at the time, the doctors called it sixth nerve palsy. I think they ruled out a lot of other scary things, and at the time just thought that it was a virus in my cranial nerve. But that was the first. I had some weird health issues, and then after I learned that I had this diagnosis, it's a super scary time, a vulnerable time. I felt like I didn't know if I was going to sneeze and all of a sudden like go paralyzed, or I was really scared and had to go inward. And then I learned a bunch of things. And there are a few things that the doctor said that, I don't have MS in my family, but they said that because I was deficient in vitamin D, that could be a trigger. The fact that I had tons of antibiotics as a kid because I had recurring earaches could also, that messed up my gut. So that was another potential trigger. And then I did have the Epstein-Barr virus. I think that's mono. I know I'm not a doctor at all, so I'll defer to you with all that. But they said that can be latent and stay in your system. And so it could have been like a trifecta, those three things coming together. So I just thought to myself, like, to be candid, I knew I was actually deficient in vitamin D, and I had gotten that results in some blood tests, but doctors and nurses were always like, oh, most people are. So I just kind of blew it off. I thought if most people are, that's not a big deal. And I didn't love taking like supplements or medicine. So I felt like it was almost my duty to share, almost like a public service announcement, like, hey, take vitamin D. And I did a ton of research, and my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're supposed to take like vitamin D3, K2. The K2, I think, helps your body assimilate it. And also, most people now know antibiotics in bulk can really wreak havoc on your system. But just a reminder, especially a lot of my friends are moms and dads. And so if there are alternative healings, I know you as a pediatrician earlier, have been amazing with finding alternative healing approaches instead of just always jumping to antibiotics. And so I almost felt like it was a public service announcement initially. That was right after I was diagnosed. A few months later, I think I took to Facebook. And also selfishly, I just thought if someone's like thinking of donating to a cause, maybe donating to help find a cure, because it's tough when it's like an autoimmune thing where there's no cure.
I'm gonna like take kind of a spiritual like commentary, just because of the place I'm in right now, on some of the things you're talking about, even vitamin D, because that is a huge topic right now. Vitamin D and COVID and needing vitamin D, and so most people I think are aware that we get vitamin D typically from the sun, from sunlight. And so if you kind of back out and take like this really grander perspective, because we're like, when we're like into the nutrients, and it's the same thing kind of when you back out and take a grander perspective, but you get a bigger view. And so like for me, vitamin D represents like our relationship to the sun, to the light. And so where do we feel that light in our lives? How are we turning our faces towards the light? And how can we do that every day and be consistent about it? And even in these times of like darkness, how can we remind ourselves and give ourselves momentum to always face the light? And so I know that may sound kind of far-fetched for people, because it's like, it's vitamin D, it's a vitamin. It's like, yes, but remember how we get it. We get it from the light. So I think that is a great reminder for all of us right now that it's been a very difficult time in the last year for the whole world. And so for each individual to take a moment and to remember to turn towards the light, metaphorically and physically. What has shifted in your life since then? Because I know so much.
Yeah, I think initially I have to say, I had to kind of go inward. So when I first got diagnosed, the phone call was tough. It was my PCP at the time who had called. He's since retired, but my regular neurologist had been on vacation. So when he shared the news, he said, oh, it's really, tough news. It doesn't look good. It's very complex. You got to really prepare for the worst. And I was like, wait, what? What are you talking about? This is on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have MS and you got to get your affairs in order. So it was like devastating. So
wow.
To get that diagnosis on the phone was tough too. I think that's supposed to happen. But
did he say like percentages or like kind of like an idea? Or?
He was reading the radiologist report. So at any rate, so I literally just was so, and I'm like the eternal optimist. I usually always look on the bright side and find hope, maybe to a fault. Sometimes I try to turn to the light. But I felt super heavy. Again, not knowing, because MS is different for each person, but to hear that from like a trusted source was really tough. And my dad called at the time, and I know you have had, a wonderful relationship with your dad too. That is a powerful thing, to be able to connect with family and friends at any time, but especially when you're feeling tough, feeling low. So it was powerful to connect at that time. And he had great perspective. Like, everyone has their stuff. Now you know what you're dealing with. And he said, many people who have chronic illness and can live a very fulfilling life. And so that might have been the little catalyst for what shifted for me. I will say beforehand, so I had awakened in the end of February with my arm not working. That was like my first major symptom. And it was so tough.
Arm not working, what does that mean?
So it was crazy. I woke up, it was a Sunday morning, and my arm didn't work. Like my brain was trying to tell my arm to do stuff, and it was just like asleep. So I felt like maybe I had just been super tired the night before and forgot to like turn over. Some crazy situations had happened 2 nights prior. One of my daughters had the stomach bug. So I was up with her the whole night. And then the following night, our family had come back from a ski trip on a red eye in Park City. So I just knew I was sleep deprived. And I thought, gosh, I was so tired. I was sleeping so much that I forgot to turn over. So over the course of the day, it never resolved. And my husband was, being very, trying to be optimistic. But after a while, he was like, I think we got to take you to the doctor. So again, it was a Sunday. So I ended up having to go to the ER, and they did a whole series of tests. And that set off a few months process of trying to diagnose what happened. And, I met with tons of traditional doctors, radiologists and neurologists, heart specialists, all sorts of things. But then meanwhile, I was trying to do things on my own, meeting with a cranial osteopathy specialist, did acupuncture. I did try all sorts of things. But to answer your question about what shifted, I ended up having to kind of really go inward and trust myself and listen to myself. Gradually, my arm started to work again, but I felt like I needed to reconnect with myself and listen to my body. And I think that translated into maybe being more grounded and kind of present.
And this is like leading into the 3 keys that you discovered. And these were themes that you noticed, like talking to so many people who also had multiple sclerosis. I mean, what prompted you to interview 25 people, and how did you decide who to talk to? And I know everyone's going to really want to get to those 3 keys, so we will be getting to that.
Yes. So when I first had reached out to some friends on Facebook and had shared that I had MS and, heads up, maybe you should take vitamin D if you're deficient, that kind of thing, I was overwhelmed with how many people had shared that they knew people who had MS. And people were super nice to say, hey, I can put you in touch. And for everybody, I said, yeah, I'd love to talk to them. So these are like college roommates of people or sisters-in-law and, et cetera. So over the course of, year and a half, I reached out to them and had conversations, sometimes through texts and emails in addition to phone calls. But I would ask them just, tell me your story. Like, when were you diagnosed? What medicine are you taking? Because I did take medicine, disease-modifying meds for, I had a couple doses of this injection for myself, but it was a B-cell inhibitor, and they thought that that's not so ideal at this time with COVID. So at some point I may go back if needed. But ask them what meds they're taking, ask them what they found worked in terms of overall wellness and feeling better, and maybe what they wish they knew when they were initially diagnosed. And I kept notes of, what people were saying, and it was amazing, the broad spectrum of experiences of different symptoms. Some people are blind in one eye, some people can't feel a whole side of their body, some people are in a wheelchair. So, it's very different.
I think that approach of like asking what was helpful, to me, it's like a common sense approach. It's like, well, what helped? And then you want to be able to explore that for yourself. And it was the way I looked at health and healing, even my first year of medical school. And I thought that you had set such a low bar, because if you did a study, there might be outliers of people who did extraordinarily well, but then those would get X'd out of the data because it would skew all the data. But to me, I was like, well, what about we study that?
Totally.
Why are we down here when we could study this? That's where the miracles are. And a miracle is just something you don't understand. But if you did, maybe you could recreate them. So what you did is like amazing.
But that's what I was looking for. I was looking for those miracles because I needed the hope. I'd had some images of some friends who had parents who had MS when we were younger, and this was before they had a lot of the more advanced medical options. And it was tough, people feeling like maybe they weren't living fulfilling lives. It's hard for me to say.
Well,
perhaps they were.
Yes, and to get such news where you're not even given, so they're talking down here where it's like, well, where's the hope and where are the miracles and where can we shift things? And it's always, an individual decision because it's your unique journey. But
that's can I just say one thing about that was powerful? I remember one person I interviewed had said that her doctor had said, I really don't recommend you have kids because the prognosis doesn't look good. And she said, well, I'm about to move and we were going to think of a family house. And he said, well, definitely buy like a one-level house. And she was like, wait, what? This is not. So she was powerfully, giving me the advice of you can accept the diagnosis, but not the prognosis. And she ended up having 3 kids and bought a 2-level house and felt like she was still able to do the stairs. And she just said, no, I'm going to take control. And so again, many people echoed this idea of like, you need to kind of control what you can control. There's so much that you can't, and I kept hearing that as a theme, that if you can control what you can, then you're able to be more resilient to all the other crazy things that happen.
And to, if she hadn't just moved with the decisions that she wanted to make, she wouldn't know if that would have been a possibility. So you can always shift later if it doesn't work out.
First, go to the light. First, have hope, and then realistic.
First, move towards hope. First is like just staying in the shadow because you think that's all there is.
Totally.
So, what are your 3 take-home messages from all of this? All these interviews? And
so these are just things that I kept hearing all these people say, and I thought, gosh, everyone can, probably hear this. It was
we'll go with the first one, which you're starting to talk about.
Yeah, the first one is get to know yourself, and I love how you can do that. That was just maybe wake up. A lot of people were like, this sounds crazy, but I feel like I'm in a better place now. I've had MS for 10 years, but truly I felt like I needed MS to wake me up, which is a crazy thing. Because you think, what a burden to have a diagnosis, but people didn't see it that way often. And so to get to know yourself, and that can look like many things, but I think to create space in your life and time and pause, some unintended pauses like COVID have given people an opportunity to learn more about themselves, but you can just consciously create that. And that for me was powerful to not be so scheduled and not always so busy. And try to be more conscious of things that were giving me energy versus draining me. And that's what a lot of people were saying. Like, if you get to know yourself of like, what makes you tick and try to do more of those things that can help you thrive, then that's awesome. So that was the first thing. Second,
what does that mean to get, I want to just tease it a tiny bit apart because, I think of, we have all our kids and stuff. So if you were to tell them, get to know yourself, what does that mean?
I think try to, create time to connect with yourself. And that's through things that other people aren't necessarily always telling you are good for you. But you're listening to and paying attention to your energy level, like so that you kind of identify what are your inner stirrings. So things that might give you energy, like music or art or being in nature or being with friends, or things that trigger you, like that are super stressful. Why is it stressful? And you can journal to get to know yourself better, right? And just kind of you let those energy, you kind of like let all that stuff.
Get to know yourself so you can follow your heart.
Totally. And I'm a work in process. I'm not like, oh, I know myself. I'm still learning.
That's what we have a whole life for this. So.
For sure. But that's the thing. The people that I talked to kept saying, finally I learned that maybe I was like in this toxic relationship that wasn't feeding me at all. So I either had to change my mindset or get out of the
Okay.
relationship.
Yeah, knowing what feeds your life.
Totally. Maybe I was numb and I realized I was drinking, I went from coffee to wine. And what was I like running from, And this is, I talked to a friend recently who had surgery, and she was saying she kept getting advice from people like, take care of yourself, do a lot of like self-care. And she was like, I gotta be honest, like it makes me want to scream. That's so stressful to me. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, when I hear self-care, I keep hearing like meditation, and that's so stressful. Like my mind stresses me out when I do meditation. I was like, oh no, I don't think that's what people mean. It's like whatever gives you energy, whatever, I find meditation works for me, but if that's stressful to you, pay attention to that. Maybe choose something else that is doing it.
It can be difficult the first way to get to know yourself, because when we have so much mental chatter and we're not ready to hear everything and to really to fully accept like what we're hearing too or feeling.
Totally.
So,
and that's the thing. I mean, to realize we're all super imperfect. And again, to me, this idea of like everyone has their stuff is empowering. So when you talked about with their kids, like as a mom, if you see things that maybe you don't think are ideal, like behaviors or whatever, you don't want to be critical, but it's also easy to be like, oh, well, this is something you need to work on right now. We all have our stuff at different times, and this is a thing you can do, try to get to sleep earlier, for example, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That reminds me of when one of mine, when she was in kindergarten or first grade and she was on the playground and another kid had said something to her, like, I don't want to play with you. And, she was upset by it and she didn't really want to tell me. But, I was like, I'd like for you to tell me. And so she told me, and she said, her feelings, but she said that everybody is working on something. And I think she's still learning how to play on the playground.
That's what your daughter said to you?
Yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, she had gotten her feelings hurt and she was aware of it, aware of herself.
Yes.
And she was also aware that I'm not judging her. Everyone's got to work on something. And she still doesn't know the rules of the playground, like how to play nicely.
I love that.
Yeah.
And she's still giving her the benefit of the doubt and just saying she's trying to figure out the way.
She knew it had nothing to do with her.
Yes. And that's the thing. That's a big, powerful message, I think, in getting to know yourself. Like it's super easy to, be stressed about a lot of things in the world, but to realize there's only so much that, a lot of the stuff is other people's baggage. And if you are able to kind of be in a good place,
even see it compassionately, and it doesn't mean you have to own it for them. But to really know who you are. And so like that example, I was like, oh, she knows her light. She knows the love in her.
Yeah.
And she knows that this comment, that even though it hurt her feelings, it doesn't have anything to do with her.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful. So number 2.
Yes, the second thing that I kept hearing is how important it is to take care of yourself. And this goes back to, I was saying, my friend that just said, like, that can look different for each person. I kept hearing from the people that I talked to that nutrition was a big deal. And I know some doctors say it is, some say it's not. I truly believe, I know you believe it is too, that nutrition is, you are what you eat, but it can be a really good vehicle for healing. And just a lot of people were talking about how they cut out gluten or dairy or different things. But what I kept hearing too was a powerful way to focus on is all the things that they could eat. Because I think if you say, like, especially in these COVID times when we're restricted so much, say, oh, put more restrictions on can be a little crazy causing. I think the inner part of me wants to like rebel. So if I keep thinking, oh, I can just focus on a ton of plant-based food or, just have a bunch of variety of whole foods. And then after a while, if you're feeding yourself with good, healthy variety of things like that, you don't need all the other stuff. So, and I'm not like so strict for myself. Sure. I stray, but the diet thing kept coming up. Supplements, a lot of people found that they just as an assurance would take things like vitamin D3, K2, et cetera, a bunch of other things that might be specifically beneficial for MS.
I mean, thinking of the food too, like just a quick comment, because we're energetic beings. So if you fill yourself with like things that are like higher vibe, just feel good stuff, things that where you feel like the earth was taken care of, whether it's plants or animals, that they were taken care of. And so this is like, these are the earth's resources that are nourishing you. So to fill yourself with that nourishment, with gratitude. And so things are so quick right now, and process and mass produce. And so we lose that connection to the earth. And so in that way, like thinking about nutrition, just from a broader sense like that, even if you don't get into the nitty gritty of it, it's like, oh, okay, which things, if the earth felt good and growing or producing, and that most likely will feel better for me too.
I love that way of looking at it. That's really neat. Yeah.
It simplifies it.
Totally. So another common theme about taking care of yourself kept coming up, that people felt like some sort of mindfulness practice, and that came up with meditation or yoga or just spending a ton of time in nature. I mean, I don't think you can overstate the power of nature and healing. I love the word Shinrin Yoku of forest bathing. I think that's such a cool concept. But people, talked about just being outside and appreciating that as a way of taking care of yourself. And of course, then there's like massage, different things physically, journaling. But I think generally, just if you get to know yourself, then try to reinforce that stuff. Like if spending time with certain people is not giving you energy, or certain activities or certain things in your life, certain behaviors of your own, then try to be conscious of that. And I think the consciousness is important. Just being connected.
Were there certain personality traits as you interviewed people? Like, did they tend to be kind of caretakers, or wanting to always like nourish other people and not themselves? Or is it just all different kinds?
All different kinds, different ages, many more women. I think I talked to 3 guys. Let's see. I think, you mentioned gratitude before, and I don't think that's necessarily a personality type, but like the awakened, like people were super grateful for good things. Like if someone was talking about that their feet aren't working the way they should, they're so psyched their hands do. I mean, grateful for, so the gratitude part, grateful for what is, or what is serving them. There were certain people who, the fact that they took my phone call shows that there's a little nurturing element. I think that's part of their healing process, to kind of pay it forward and share with me what worked for them. So that was super like benevolent. But it wasn't like everyone was like type A or, I don't know. I should go back to my psychology books from college of what personality types. But
no, just in a regular talking sense, instead of like a strict category types, but
open. I mean, I think I would say like kind of woke, like that's kind of an overused word maybe, but awakened, like truly the concept of, it's so weird that like a diagnosis had to wake me up. People kept saying, but I really feel more joy in my life now because I don't sweat the small stuff. I don't, worry about all the baggage or the BS or something. I'm just trying to live fully. And so that personality, the people being grateful, trying to do things to refill their till, so they're showing up better. And then as a parent, some people were parents and they were saying like, I want to make sure I'm showing that I'm taking care of myself. Look, there's a lot of stuff I can't control, and there will be tough days, and I need to be real about that. But for my kids to see that I'm, making good choices most of the time is powerful.
I mean, there's so much research on how like being more mindful and present and nature, how that can help our health. And just, reflecting back on my week, Monday was really difficult. So we spent most of the day in the hospital, but my dad had already passed. So we were with him, his body, as he was continuing to transition. So I can feel the cranial rhythm. So those will continue even after the time of death.
In his body, the cranial rhythm?
Yes. So I've been fortunate to be with some loved ones when they've passed. And so the cranial rhythms, I'm happy to like share more of this. I'll maybe do that. and another recording if people are interested in that. So those continue. And so, of course, we were like overwhelmed with emotion. And I had argued, with him and his spirit before he really fully left. And I had argued with God, and I was mad and like selfishly, like, pleading, but I knew it was not like my will. But, I talked myself through. It's like if you had that really loving presence. And I did that for myself too, because even though it was so difficult to feel these things, I said to myself, I was like, I want to be here and I want to feel this fully, because this is such a precious moment, even though it's so difficult. And then they were still during the transition, and then, had crossed the point of like being able to return to his body. But I was like, I'm not trading this experience up, and I wouldn't choose to be somewhere else. So, I walked myself kind of through it as I would maybe somebody else or one of my friends or a patient or a family member, just just reminders to like breathe and like feel my whole body and whatever I was feeling, to let myself feel it, because I wasn't going to get this moment back. And this was the only time I could be there and really like be fully present with it. This was my one chance to be present in this transitional moment. And, of course it's hard, but that's like the rainbow of living. And if anyone's ever seen that Disney movie, Soul, I mean, there's the reason for that rainbow of living. And that was like my, my feeling of like, I don't want to trade this in for anything. And on the one hand, it's not like I enjoyed it, but I treasured the experience. It's not like I would wish it on myself, but it was really important to me. So I wanted to be able to experience it as fully as I could. And it's not like a good or bad thing if you get overwhelmed, because, there were moments where I was like, I can't even think, where you start to feel numb. And, talking about multiple sclerosis, this is like a very common theme. And I guess that leads us into that third key message.
The third key message, right? That people, when I was teasing out what people with the feedback they were giving, is how important it is to be your authentic self, which thank you for sharing. I mean, that's such a poignant, powerful experience. And as you said, it wasn't that you necessarily sought it out because you knew it was going to be good or bad. It just is. And I think that being, open to the reality and, so being your authentic self is a powerful takeaway.
And that's something that, I had heard you say before, that at times in your life you already felt numb in a way.
Totally. I think I had a whole lot of roles, a lot of hats I was wearing, a mom, working part-time, full-time at different times, volunteer. And I just would like throw myself into this stuff. And I kind of was like, maybe getting a little rush, an adrenaline rush off the acute stress, maybe kind of like, wow, I love the multitasking. I'm driving and then, not talking on the phone when I'm driving, but
I totally identify with that, because even in high school, I used to remember saying, I was like, I thrive on stress. What a crazy thing to say.
Super sick. No, and I
had adrenaline rush, I guess.
Right. Because I know what a number can do on your body. That's why I'm like, yikes, that's not a healthy thing. But I felt like I was thriving because I was able to like do it.
Because you could function in a way where it appears you're functioning really well to the world.
Right.
Very, successful in on the earthly plane.
Right. And that's the thing for me, a big takeaway in this whole journey for myself is finding tools to help me find my calm. Because I actually ultimately feel like I'm much more productive. That's not necessarily the end goal, but like, I feel much more peaceful. I feel more grounded and centered when I have sorts of tools that can help me find my calm. So to help, that's like deep breathing. Again, for me, I love yoga. I love, meditation. I love being in nature, walking with friends. It's actually fun to have dogs that, even we had a snowstorm last night, but even in crazy cold weather, you have to get out there because they need exercise. So I love being outside in all weather, but to try to, and I mentioned on that post, how important it is for me to be able to be myself. And that doesn't mean you have to share your baggage with the whole world, but I think to have people in your life that you can really be real with. I've had some friends share, I got to be honest, when I reflect, when I used to be in the corporate world, I don't think I was always myself because I was afraid that maybe I wasn't good enough, or they might poke holes in my experience, or they'd realize I'm not really who they think I am or something. So I was always kind of guarded. And I think I would have been a whole lot happier if I was real, so these kind of themes that resonates with me too. I think we're wearing a lot of different hats, playing different roles. And it's important to kind of listen to who you are and to be able to share. Again, maybe it's just with your family and close friend group that you can really let your guard down. But I think it's important to be able to have people in your life to be real.
Yeah. I mean, well, growing up, like I was kind of a perfectionist, and I was more of a mindset of you have to work really hard to get anything that you want, which is only a mindset. It doesn't mean not work hard, but now my work is my play. So it's much more in that flow and that ease where it's like, I don't mind it. It doesn't feel like work.
You're so good at what you do. So that's awesome.
It's just like, it's your heart's calling. And even if you do work hard, it doesn't have that same pressure on it. And I'm no longer burdened by like always the concern about what people think if I get a good grade, or like, it's like always getting the scorecard, somebody else gets to decide that, like if you're good enough.
Yeah.
And even when in first year of college, we had this talk about medical school, and they told us, they put the fear in us. They were like, it's going to be so hard. Most of you won't make it. I mean, we were all at Harvard. So like for them to be telling that group of pre-meds that like, it's going to be so hard, most of you don't make it. I'm like, oh my gosh.
The pressure.
You're already like in that fight or flight stage, and you haven't even learned anything about like health and healing yet. So a lot of things I had to kind of like unwind and relearn in a way that really was more supportive of healing, and that authentic experience. Things, that's okay if things are hard. And I see my kids like, it's as parents, like maybe you want to like pave the way and make things completely like stress-free and they have no discomfort in life. Which like, I get that. I have 4. So, but I also know that they learn so much when they stumble and they try to figure things out on their own. And they want to figure things out. From the youngest to the oldest, like sometimes they just want to have experiences just to have them. And even though, sometimes my husband and I are like, well, we could tell you how to do that and it would be easier for you. And they look at us and they're like, we don't want you to do that.
That's good. They know. Yeah. They know themselves.
So, I mean, so it's sort of like that permission before giving the advice and the whatever, passing on your experience and wisdom. So it's to honor that, like, and I think where they are in that stage in their life, and then to remember like where I was at that stage and the things that I hadn't yet experienced and learned. And there's not always a shortcut to it. I take every shortcut that I learn about, though. Those are the miracles, and study that. So I do believe in shortcuts and quantum, but I also believe in free will and honoring even my own kids, like free will. That doesn't mean that they are allowed to do anything they want, but that when they have a heart's desire, how can I support them and how can I honor them, even if I know they're going to make mistakes and stumble and fall and have to figure it out. themselves. But mainly the message is that it doesn't matter. You're always loved.
You're always loved. And that's so powerful because there's so much sort of societal pressure.
So that you're not going to be loved if you don't look this way, if you don't
win the race or something. It's crazy. Yeah. So I love that you're doing that. I think we can all learn from that for sure to do a better job to make sure you listen to or help your kids listen to their inner calling and be their authentic selves as well. And
believe me, we have plenty of mishaps. It's not like we have it perfect either. But it's kind of the fun in it. So I like to see the humor and things as well. One of my dad's favorite things to do was eat ice cream straight from the tub.
That's awesome. My kind of guy.
So you know how much I'm a proponent of like healthy eating and everything, but to honor him, we were picking a night this week and we're all eting ice cream from the tub.
That's awesome. That's a great way to do that.
So it's not an all or nothing.
Yeah.
Things are not black and white. There is so much gray. Actually, it's not the gray, it's the rainbow. And I love that about living.
I love that too.
Well, thank you, Janet, for being here with me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Really, special week, and to have a friend on here to talk about. And I know maybe we took some different turns and were expected during a conversation, but it all intertwines.
It does. Well, thank you for allowing me to be with you at this time. And I've been thinking of you and your whole family.
And these are messages that I hope that we can pass on to our kids as they're ready. If you want to connect with me or Janet, you can. And Janet's her Instagram is well.thought.out. And my Instagram is at allworldshealth. And website is allworldshealth.com. So if you are on my newsletter, that you can always sign up. It's on my website. I think I'll put a private link out. I'm going to share some of my experience with my dad and his crossing over. But if you're on there, then I'm going to share it with the people that are kind of like in my circle. And as always, please like and subscribe. So it sounds so strange to be like talking about these things. But I really do love connecting with all of you. And this conversation today warms my heart, and I hope that it does the same for you. So lots of love to you, and I will see you next week.
Thank you.